Right, hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Yitro 5784. And I want to thank our anonymous host for allowing us to record here and give the class. The Parsha, of course, is very, very focused on one event. There aren't too many Parsha like that. Even the Parsha of the flood in Noach had other events in the Parsha, including the build-up before the flood and everything else, and also the destruction in the Tower of Babel. This Parsha is all about the Ten Commandments. The Jewish people come to Har Sinai. Hashem commands Moshe whatever he commands him about regarding the Jewish people being pure and ready to receive the Torah, and about the mountain, how it needs to be separated so that no animals or people go to it. But aside from all that, the entire Parsha is just the Ten Commandments. And however they're divided and however we decide what the Ten Commandments are, we're going to go with Rashi's understanding for our purposes. And we'll go from there. So let's share the source sheet here that I did not send out by email today, actually, but it's available if you need it. It's on my Sefaria page, 0205. That's the fifth parsha of the second book of the Torah, 5784. Let's start off with some of the command. It says in chapter 19, verse 3 through 6. We're going to look at several verses here altogether. Moshe Allah El Elokim, Hashem, Moshe went up to God, whatever that means. So he went up the mountain. V'yikra elav Hashem. Hashem spoke to him, min hahar, from the mountain, lemor, saying, Kotamar leveit Yaakov, v'tagid leveit Yisrael. Say like this to the Beit Yaakov, it sounds like the house of Yaakov, with Tagid, and like from the word Hagad or Tagid, to tell over with more detail or something, Livnei Yisrael, to the children of Israel. And then he says, Atem ra'item et asher asiti leMitzrayim, you saw what I did to Mitzrayim. And Rav Hirsch makes a big point about the fact that you saw it. It's not like a belief, like we believe that you saved us from Egypt. You saw it. It's a physical, normal, real, scientifically proven thing that you saw, right? So that's how a relationship with Hashem. We're supposed to know Him like that much. And I carried you on the wings of eagles, and I went with you, right? And now, if you listen to my voice, ushmartem et briti, and guard my covenant, vayitem li segula, you will be for me a segula, is like a sign or treasure, mikol ha'amim, from all the other nations, ki li kol ha'aretz, because the whole world is mine. So now I made the whole world, says Hashem, and I chose you to somehow be a signpost, to be special in listening to these mitzvot that I'm going to teach you. Vatem to you li mamlechet kohanim, and you should be for me a kingdom, mamlechet from the word melech, which means king. So kingdom of kohanim. So there's a mixture here of something like there's a governmental sort of like kingdom, right? It's politics, whatever. And Kohanim is the priests. So you should be a kingdom of priests. So there should be an aspect in Judaism that's expected to be more or less social, like a government would expect, and something that's not at all social, something very holy and something very personal. Like a Kohen is supposed to have a very personal relationship with Hashem. Anyway, v'goy kadosh, and a holy nation. Eile hadvarim asher tidaber el bnei Yisrael. These are the words that you should say to bnei Yisrael. Again. So, just focusing on that strange phrase in the beginning that said that say this to Beit Yaakov and then relate this to bnei Yisrael, as if those are two different things. The house of Yaakov and the children of Israel. It's not the same thing. They're both, Yaakov and Israel are the same person. And these are the descendants of Yaakov, of Israel. So like, what does it mean, the house of Yaakov and the children of Israel? It says Rashi, the famous Rashi here, he quotes from the Mechilta, which is, and from the Gemara, I believe. Mechilta, which is usually a halachic midrash associated with the book of Shemot. So Leveit Yaakov, the house of Yaakov, Elu Hanashim. These are the women. Tomar lahem b'lashon raka, and speak to them in a gentle voice, in a gentle tone. That's how Rashi says it. But however you're speaking to the women, speak to the women differently. So first of all, women are supposed to be taught Torah. It's one of the reasons. It's one of the reasons why there was this emphasis on the Jewish people being holy and staying. It says that later on it says yenechonim, to be pure, to stay away from women for those 3 days before the giving of the Torah. The reason is because women needed to be at the beginning of the Torah as well, and if they would have had any kind of relationship with a man, it would take 3 days for them to purify themselves for them to be there. The man only needed 1 day, so the man would have been pure. It's the women that we were careful to keep pure for 3 days so that they could be in attendance as well. So anyway, so this is the command to teach the women, v'tagid l'bnei Yisrael, to speak to the children of Israel. This anashim, this means the anashim, the dukim perish charim. This is talking about the men. Devarim kashim kigidim, and you're supposed to speak to them. You can speak to them more harshly, more. I guess they're expected to have, a different kind of. They can have even like a sort of. Almost an angry sort of voice, as it seems to be implied. Now, what is also interesting, keep that in mind. It's also interesting. So, in other words, we have a certain way we're supposed to talk to the women, and a certain way Moshe is supposed to speak to the men, and it's supposed to be different. But then later on, the very, very end of the parsha, the end of that part that I read to you, it said, and these are the words of attempt to you, li mamlechet kohanim v'go kadosh. So, what am I looking for? The very last 5 words are Elahad 6, 7. I'm not doing the math here. Elahad, these are the words Asher Tidaber El Bnei. These are the words that you should say to the Bnei Israel. That's how we ended these verses that we read. What does it mean, Elahad Varim? These are the words. Why are you giving so much of a lead up? Just tell us what it is. These are the words. So it's a little strange. So Rashi points out, lo pachod v'lo yoter, not more and not less. As if, it seems like the assumption is, as if Moshe would have been said, Hashem would have said, started the 10 Commandments with, I am Hashem your God, and Moshe would have said something like, I'm speaking for Hashem your God, who is also the creator of the world, and he also made Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. That's not what Hashem said. So why are you adding in things? So the implication is that maybe he would, which is strange. And this is again Rashi quoting from the Mechilta again. And so to answer this question, we're going to go to the Nitziv, the famous Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Volozhin, or the last Rosh Yeshiva there. So he has a book on the Torah called Hamek Davar. We've quoted from it before. So he says, Elohad Varim, Tiny b'mechilta, shelo tapachod, shelo tosif. You can't add, you can't subtract. Now the question is, what does this mean? Obviously, Moshe, we're not really expecting Moshe to add or subtract the 10 commandments. It's not going to be 11 commandments, or like what's the Mel Brooks thing, 15 commandments, right? So, and then he drops one of the stones and it's 10 commandments, right? So, Perish, the explanation is Levad, he's saver sheyeh lechol echad lefi kocho kemoshe hikdim kot omar leveit Yaakov tagil b'nei Yisrael. So remember what we said about how Moshe is supposed to speak differently to the women than he is to the men. So what that really means, says the Nitziv, is that every Jew, when they received the Torah at Har Sinai, they received it on their level. That's what it means. And so, aval dvar Hashem kasher heima tedaber livnei Yisrael haina lekulam b'Shabbat. They're supposed to really, we expect that it's Hashem's word. It's the truth. It doesn't everybody receive that the same way. So the answer is b'li girion hosafa. It's supposed to receive the word of Hashem. It's supposed to receive without any kind of additions. Yikahaya Hatzivu B'Kol Parshat HaTorah. Every verse in the Torah, excuse me, about to sneeze. Sorry about that. So every verse in the Torah, it has to be that verse. It can't have any additions, can't have any subtractions. In fact, when the Torah is being read, when the Torah is being laid in public, even then it's the job of the congregation to make sure that the person reading the Torah doesn't mix in the verses. Each verse has to have its own unique its beginning and end. Devar al bnei Israel, as it says, speak to the children of Israel, and Marta Alehem, and say to them, Ubiyarnu reish sefer vayikra. We explain, so the Hamak David explains in the beginning of the book of Vayikra, which apparently he wrote before he wrote his commentary in Shemot, by the way. Devar el bnei Yisrael hu haparsha kasher hu deber Hashem. You're supposed to explain the verse, quote the verse as Hashem told you to. No additions, no subtractions, exactly word for word as Hashem said. V'achar kach ve'amarta alehem, but the later phrase, say to them, that's different. Say to them means hayinu habir b'torah sheba'al peh. When it says give them the verse, that's the verse. No playing around. The beginning, the end, and everything in between has to be exactly as it was written. But the explanation, that can be said differently because that's the Torah Sheba'al Peh. The Torah Sheba'al Peh, the oral Torah, can and was until the Mishnah was written down around the year 250 or whatever of the Common Era. Up until then, the entire oral law was memorized. And you didn't have to have the exact same words for every person. You could speak to each person to the best of their ability. And that ties in with the next part that we said, that the women received the Torah in one way and the men received the Torah in another way. Not the verses of the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments were given exactly as they're written. Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem your God. No additions, no subtractions. But when it's explained, that's where you can already extend yourself a little bit more. And the teacher has the right, and not only has the right, probably has the responsibility that when he's teaching, to teach everybody according to their level. That's one of the difficulties in really teaching anything, frankly, is that you don't always know what that level is necessarily. And so that's and not everybody's happy with that, apparently. So that's that. So he goes on to say more. He basically starts speaking about why there's a difference between if that's true. Usually the bear and the amarta are in a different order than they are here. So here the order is reversed because of the importance of it says kan kativ lehefach. Here it says it the other way. Tamur shel davar hu al pi shibur v'fnenu shekodem matan Torah hu daber Hashem hashchina medaberet migruno shel Moshe. Before the giving of the Torah, the Shechina Hashem in the Shechina, whatever that means, the Shechina is like our perception of God in this world, spoke through Moshe's voice. It came out of his throat, right? And then the Jewish people heard. Masha Enkim Bir Haparsha Shahu Deber Moshe El Lo Haya Nishma L'Chol Yisrael El Ledaber L'Zikein V'Hema L'Yisrael. But later on, after the Achar means Matan Torah, but after the giving of the Torah, Afilu Dvar Moshe Higia L'Chol Yisrael. Even the voice of Moshe had to be given to the Jewish people. In other words, before it was just Hashem's voice, without any explanation from Moshe. But now once the Torah is given, now there has to be an oral law because the oral law was given together with the written law. And now you have also Moshe's voice. He has to have a separate sort of voice, in other words, quote unquote. And so that's why there's an emphasis here of this is why the order is reversed in terms of these two verbs. All right, we're going to go on from there. You can read more about that later on. Let's go straight into the Ten Commandments. Chapter 20 remember the chapter numbers are not Jewish in origin, but we do use them for reference. The monks in rewriting the Bible, the Christian monks, they came up with the chapter numbers. Anyway, chapter 20 is all about the Ten Commandments. It says the first verse of V'yidaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'ela lemor. Hashem said all of these words, saying. And Rashi says et kol hadvarim ha'ela, all these words. Melamed amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu aser hadibur b'dibur echad. Rashi says that the entire Ten Commandments were given in one word, all at once. Now, the Jewish people who were there miraculously heard all of these separate voices and sounds and words as separate words, but they're all said in basically 1 second. A person's obviously, it's impossible for a person to say this as fast as they might speak or rap or sing. They're not going to be able to say everything all in 1 second. And this is one of the things that makes Hashem unique. If we needed other things to point out Hashem's uniqueness, he can do this. And then Moshe had to go back and explain each word in each utterance like that. So amongst those words are, of course, the two commands that we know about Shabbat of Shamor v'Zachor. We even sing in the song L'Chadudi, we say Shamor v'Zachor b'dibur echad. We said Shamor and Zachor, Hashem said in one word. So the verse of guard Shabbos and the verse to remember the Sabbath were both said at the same time. Particularly this command of Shabbat here, Zachor Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho. Remember the day of Shabbat to make it holy. 6 days you should work. 6 days you should work and do all of your work. Shabbat LaHashem, and the 7th day is Shabbat for Hashem Elokecha. Lo taseh kol malacha. You should not do any work. Ata, you, Vincha, your son, Vidcha, Vitecha, your daughter, Avdecha, your servant, V'amatcha, your female servant, V'hemtecha, your animal, Gercha, the convert amongst you, Asher B'sharecha, that's in your midst. Ki sheshet yamim ha'asa Hashem et hashamayim v'et ha'aretz. This is the reason we do this is to celebrate the fact that Hashem in 6 days created the heavens and the earth, et hayam v'et kol asher bam, the ocean and everything that's in it. V'yanach b'yom hashvi'i, and then he rested on the 7th day. Al kain berach Hashem et yom ha'shabbat l'kadshehu. Therefore Hashem blessed the 7th day and made it holy. Now, later on in the Torah, much later in Parshat Ki Tisa, chapter 31 of the same book, we're going to have a verse that says, "V'atata deber el bnei Yisrael," you should speak to the children of Israel, and it gives the rules of Shabbat. Lemor ach et shabtotai tishmeru, keep my Sabbaths. And here's the question: why am I bringing all this up? The question is, in our verse, we said Zachor Yom HaShabbat in singular, Sabbath. And in that verse in chapter 31, it says Shabtotai, my Sabbaths, in plural, Tishmeru, you should guard. So how come over there it's in plural and here it's in singular? Either be consistent throughout the Torah and always have it singular, always have a plural. It's a little bit strange. Luckily, I'm not the only person to ask the question. Haktav HaKabbalah asks the question as well, and he gives a beautiful answer. Bal loshen yachad al rabim. There's a singular language and a double language. It has to have a reason. He says, Tam Shabtotai ba'avur ki Shabbatot Hashana heim rabim. So he quotes first the Ramban. The Ramban says, it says it in plural because there are many Sabbaths in a year. Keep all of the Sabbaths, not just one Sabbath a year, all of them. All right, so that's a simple explanation. lefiha bevor, and then he explains in other words, b'shem Shabbat sheyesh pi shnayim b'horato. There's two things we're supposed to try to remember about Shabbat. Ha'echad inyan habitul lehefsek memlacha. First, you have to remember to stay away from work. V'hasheni, and the second thing, inyan yashuv hadat le'inei ha'elokim. So the second thing is to remember that we're supposed to focus on holy things. So that's the second reason why it says it in the plural, because it's almost like im kein yesh b'chol Shabbat b'Shabbat shtei shabitot shabitot haguf isket olam v'shvitat hayishuv v'yishuv hanefesh itasek binyanim ruchanim elokim. So there's really two things that we're supposed to always remember about Shabbat. One is the physical thing about not doing work, and the other thing is a separate thing. It's almost like a separate day, and that is to have a day when we focus and think about holy spiritual things. Really, they don't necessarily have to have anything to do with each other. Vein shvitat haguf levada iker tachlit kiyum asa shvitat Shabbat. He points out, first of all, that just the physical rest of sleeping through the day is not the way to celebrate Shabbat. First of all, it's not it's not just a day to lounge in a beach chair and read your favorite book. There's supposed to be something holy about Shabbat as well. Right? So ki amnam enu rak siba goremet al shbitat yishuv dat hanefesh. That rest, that physical rest, is meant to help us have time for that spiritual thing we're supposed to do. And otherwise, it's there's almost like no point in just resting. So that's the point of it is the intent of Shabbat is to have that spiritual connection. And that's why that verse is coming in plural to remind you. To tell you that every Shabbat you're really supposed to be keeping two Sabbaths, a physical Sabbath and a spiritual Sabbath. And they're kind of linked together. They're symbiotic, right? That the one feeds into the other, and the spiritual rest helps you have a physical rest as well. They're really one, which is why in our parsha, when we're told to keep Shabbat, we're not told to keep the Sabbaths. We're told Zachor Yom HaShabbat in singular, because really those two things are supposed to be united. We're supposed to remember that there's two separate things we're supposed to do, but really they're united, and that's why it was said in the plural later on in the Torah. So that's just some of the ideas I wanted to share with you. I know it's a shorter class than usual, but I thought it was important to have a class on this beautiful parsha of Shabbat, Shabbat Yitro, and of course, when we get to Parshat V'etchanan, and in previous videos as well, you'll have the opportunity to see some of the other things, some of the other thoughts that we were merited to share from some of the wise people, wise rabbis, and such of our history. I want you to all have a Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for listening.